Hello everyone. I decided that I need to do one more recording worth of information before I can get into builds. I did one yesterday to kind of go over some other stuff, but this time this will go over a little bit more advanced stuff. I'm going to be talking about a wide range of topics, so let me get right to it. Starting with iconic keywording. On the melee weapons, at least with this one over here, and this one over here, you'll notice that they have two different wordings. One says strong attack, which is Tinkerbell, and then I don't want to try to pronounce this, but this one says non-standard attacks. So as far as I know, non-standard attacks does mean strong attack. I've done some Googling on it, and that appears to be the conclusion of everybody else, so I think it's safe to say that that is indeed strong attacks. Let me use one more example because this actually will be important towards my build recordings. So Buzzsaw and Prejudice share the same keywording. Prejudice is that AR you see kind of towards the bottom, but they both say high penetration rounds. High penetration rounds means that it will punch through objects and ignores armor. That means it has the equivalent of superconductor, which is that tech perk that says tech weapons ignore armor. High penetration rounds do the exact same thing, but on a different scale. Because it doesn't require a charge. It's just hold down the trigger, it'll punch through objects and people. For that reason, Buzzsaw and Prejudice are very strong. Unfortunately, Prejudice is something you don't get until the very end of the game. So Buzzsaw is the only high penetration round iconic that you will see early on. Okay, with keywording out of the way, I do want to now talk about the katanas, as this is very important for a future build discussion. Okay, there is a handful of katanas here, and this all is accurate in terms of their description. Their damage is not very accurate though, I can tell you that, but the ones that I think you should be aware of are going to be Satori, Scalpel, Cocktail Stick, and this one up here that I can't pronounce, or at least I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. The reason I want you to be aware of these katanas in particular is because they are all different play styles, and I don't think that the other one can really work with any play styles. I'll show that real quickly. This one requires, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but it requires the cyberware that slows down time. The other one that slows down time, that is, not Sandavistum, but the other one. So I don't think that's really going to fit into any play styles, but the other ones will. Okay, let's talk about Satori because this seems to be the most common. Satori is very common in builds, in large part because of its high crit damage. Satori can work in high crit builds, but it does require a lot of crit to make it worth it. See, the problem with Satori is that it lowers its overall damage in exchange for critical damage. So its raw damage is not going to be as high as the other katanas. It can work in high crit builds, but I wouldn't bank on it because I think that there is a crit chance cap somewhere in the game. I've noticed that people have gotten really high numbers in their character sheets, but they aren't critting all the time. So it's clear that you can't get 100% crit through mods, passives, and other things. This could be a bug of the game because people have reported that their character sheet isn't reading properly. That could be the cause of it, but who knows? Short version is don't rely on Satori as much as people want you to. There are certainly some downfalls to it, and I do think that things could be a little bit better. With that in mind, let's talk about Cocktail Stick. Cocktail Stick is interesting because of its crit chance and very high damage. It's not going to rely on critical damage like Satori, so it's going to have more raw damage. The Cocktail Stick can get up to 10% crit chance, which is unusual because most weapons in the game will only roll 7% when crafted. Cocktail Stick does roll up to 10%. I've seen it before, so I know that to be accurate. So yes, Cocktail Stick is your raw damage katana and certainly feasible in any build that you wish to use it with. Moving on to Scalpel. Now, in my prior recording, I was talking about Berserk versus Sandevistan. I was doing that because a lot of people were saying that Berserk sucks, and I disagree with that. I gave my reasons. However, Sandevistan is going to be the more common operating system cyberware in people's builds. And because of that, Scalpel can be a defensive katana. If you'll notice under the perks for blades, there is one that says whenever you apply bleeding or attack a target with bleeding, you get health back. Scalpel can do just that when Sandevistan's active, assuming that you have the perk linked to it. However, this, like Satori, has an Achilles heel. You see, not everything can bleed. There is that problem. So, even though that it is kind of an Achilles heel, it still has the ability to do electric damage and crit chance. You'll notice crit chance is increased by 50% when Sandevistan's active, so Scalpel actually is going to be more consistent than Satori if you're doing a critical build using Sandevistan. In my opinion, Scalpel is better than Satori because of this. Moving on to the one I'm not really able to pronounce. The reason I like this particular blade is because of its ability to do electrical damage. It also has a bunch of other goodies in there, but the main point is using electrical. Robots, turrets, and that kind of stuff, they are weak to electrical. So that means this blade in particular is going to be really good for taking down those targets. While the other blade, Scalpel, does something. You can see that it does increase electrical damage, same as this one. The main difference with this one is that you're getting shock chance on it. So you're actually getting the ability to apply a debuff in comparison to the other one. Also, the other one's more reliant on Sandevistan, so this one works a little bit better with Berserk. That's kind of how you have to think about it. This particular blade and Cocktail are going to be the two blades that would work best with Berserk in comparison to the other blades. Okay, that is all of that. Now let's talk about less lethal. When I was first doing my recordings for Cyberpunk, I was only aware of PAX and the cyberware mod that makes all of your weapons less lethal. I was new to Cyberpunk then, so I was not aware that there were other options for less lethal. And I want to go ahead and talk about that so I can add to what was already said. So there is a cyberware mod for your crochet optics that does make all of your weapons less lethal, but it does require the smart targeting link thing, which you can get through one of the gigs as a reward. So you don't have to spend 9,000 eddies to get smart link. But the problem with it is that it says you do not get bonus headshot damage. So I'm not really sure if the crochet optic mod is a really good way to go. PAX, on the other hand, PAX is where things are a little bit different. PAX is a weapon mod that says it turns it less lethal and increases its damage. So that's pretty interesting. We'll get into that a little bit later, but let me go ahead and tab over just so you can see that. There it is. Yep, see, there's PAX right there. So yeah, PAX is an interesting one. So if you're trying to do less lethal, then actually that does a little bit better than some other things. The thing that I've learned since then, though, is that as long as the last hit on a target is non-lethal, then that will count. So let's just say that you use a katana to wear down a target to 5% HP and then you use your fists and punch them the rest of the way. That is considered less lethal. I do want to point out the blunt weapons because this ties into the less lethal discussion and why I'll be using katanas over blunt in the future build recordings. The problem with less lethal is that if you dismember the target, it doesn't count as less lethal. Now it's a kill. I have noticed that blunt weapons can dismember a target. Katanas obviously can as well. But seeing as it can happen with blunt weapons, then I think that katanas are the way to go because katanas are just better in terms of damage for melee over the blunt weapons. Blunt weapons, their passives are all related to survivability and stuff, so there's not going to be anything in there for crit like the katanas would. So for that reason, I'm going to say that it's probably best to use katanas over blunt, and then if you have a gig or side mission that specifically states you can't kill the target, then just bring them down to 5% HP and then punch them. Just handle it that way. That'll be a much better way of handling it. Let me go ahead and now talk about why I'm going to be talking about melee so much. The reason for me wanting to talk about melee and why I'm going to stress that it's important is because of the way the game is. When you get to the higher difficulties, you'll start to notice certain things don't work as well as it did in the lower difficulties. One of those things is relying on guns to bring down a target. There will be targets that will get up in your face with melee. It will be way too difficult at the higher difficulties to down an enemy in one magazine, and by then they're already in your face, you're probably at quarter HP. For that reason, I do think that melee is important in any build, because it's the only way that you can handle a target like that effectively. I mean, sure, you could probably whittle them down pretty good, but you're not going to be able to do as nearly as much with the melee because you get so much defensive capability in terms of dodging, blocking, and things like that, which will handle that situation a little bit better than the guns. Sure, you can get the dodge with revolvers, but you're not going to have the block to go with it. So yes, I do think that melee is important as either a primary function or supporting function of a build. It's not like you're going to have perks left over anyways, so you might as well at least carry around a melee weapon for those situations where you got something in your face. Or if something rushes you and like you're in a cover situation, if they rush you and they are right next to your cover, you can bust out with the melee weapon and deal with them that way. So some scenarios to think about. Okay, I gotta finish with this recording by talking about the mods themselves. Let's see. Okay. So Fortuna and Bully are pretty common in armor for people. However, there is an issue with this, and I don't know if there is a bug with this or if that's just a function of the game. But as far as I can tell, armor mods are unique. That means that if you have Bully or Fortuna in a armor piece, you can't have more of them. So let's just say you put Bully and Fortuna in your chest piece, then that means it can't be in the helmet, pants, shoes, etc. I don't know if this applies to the weapon mods as well. It wouldn't make sense if it does apply to the weapon mods because you would be carrying around different weapons, but it's just something to be aware of. So keep in mind that you do have certain mods that are unique. With that, that's all the information that I need to get out to you so that I can discuss builds, which we'll get into not too long from now. Thanks for listening.